Welcome to another edition of Real Talk, Straight Talk. I got Easy on the left, Luke on the right. And people, we've been in the studio for about 20 minutes, and it's been a little scenario where I'm trying to get everybody's names right. Well, not everybody. I'm trying to get Easy's name right. And there's a little bet going on how long it's going to take me to get the name right. So this bet is going out to everybody that's watching Real Talk. There's people that says it's going to take me a month. Somebody says it's going to take me a year. Chime in, let us know how long it's going to take me to get Easy's name right. So for today, like I said, it's Easy on the left and Luke on the right. Welcome, Ease.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Luke, what's going on?
Thanks, man. Thank you, Aggie, man, for having us here.
And now we got that out of the way, got them introduced again. Got to send a big shout to our sponsors, starting off with the Wayne Community Center, Pastor T doing her thing. Big shouts to Angel, you know, our regular co-host. She's not here this week, but got to big up the Fix Inc. Hair Salon, ladies. You know what to do, the Fix Inc. Going down to Up Like 7 Barbershop, Put on the Crew, coming up to Paranite Bar and Grill. Our newest sponsor, of course, Black Lotus. Sending a big shout out to Melissa. Now I'm going to head out of town, talk about Rhythm Movements Community Association. They got Flow Fest, August 5th and 6th. That's in the Ottawa region. Once again, Rhythm Movements Community Association. Going to stop off in Hamilton, talk about Soul Kitchen Radio, Big John. I always say it's Canada's #1 reggae music station. Coming back in town, last definitely not least, got to send a big shout out to Kevin and Pride. Now, all of us are London residents. I've been here for a while. You guys have just been here. So this is a conversation where we get to ask you. Actually, I'm going to start with all of you out there. If you live in London, let us know what you think. Has London changed the way you think it should change? Is it changing fast enough? Is London a place that is comfortable for not just the black minority, but for any minorities? If you've been here longer than 10 years, we're interested in your thoughts. So let us know. Hit us up at info@evomm3.com. info@evomm3.com. Hit us up online. We are on Facebook and Instagram. So the question is, has London changed enough? And what changes would you like to see London do going forward? Now, in terms of changing, and before we get into the whole general conversation, got an attachment that was sent to me. There is an anti-black racism action plan that the City of London is trying to develop. They have this. London is looking for the input, and like I said, it's an anti-black racism action plan. They're looking for input from the black communities. So please look it up. It is online. I know it's been on Facebook. if you go on Evolution, if you're or whoever, there's so many people that have been sharing this. I know London Black Network has been sharing it. We've been sharing it. One of my good friends, Gary Brown, who's he's been sharing it. So there are a lot of people sharing it. Please, if you are from our communities, our black communities, your input is needed. And I'm actually going to start right there and ask my guys why you think input is needed. I know why the input is needed, right? But I'm gonna get your thoughts on this. And I know I just brought this up to you guys, right? So once again, people, it's the Anti-Black Racism Action Plan that's being developed by the City of London. The question is it needed? And why is it needed?
Yeah, I think our input is definitely needed because if you don't voice the changes that you want, it's not going to happen. So I think it's very important, actually, that every single person in our community is constantly, making it known that we are necessarily, it's not that uncomfortable, but, things need to change in certain aspects, And we can go into examples later, but that's just what I think about why input is necessary.
Yes, because it's true, because it concerns us, the community. We need to get involved. Change comes from taking action, primarily. So we need to step out and do something about it. And there's different ways. We'll get into it, different examples. But yeah, that would be one way.
There's some people that would say that it's a little too late, and they're going to wonder if London is actually interested in their input, or if this is just something to appease, right? Over the years, there's some people that have said that London hasn't done enough, and they just play lip service. Do you think this is lip service, or do you think there's something that's going to come out of this?
Are we talking specifically about the
And I'm going to talk
article?
specifically about the Anti-Black Racism Plan, because there are other things that have happened. So there comes a time where people tend to doubt the validity of these initiatives, because it is an initiative, right?
I do think that I see why sometimes the message at first might be perceived as they're just trying to appease what is like a global trend, a big opinion, something that is big out there socially. And although if this initiative is being taken and with the help of the community, we will see that we can get to the objective of this. If it comes from us, we need to start taking action, but yeah, that would be the first thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely fair to question the validity of the incentives, because a lot of times if you don't, then there's like more hate being spread. Yeah. I can't really say for that example, I haven't looked at it yet, but it seems to me that they are interested in actually, wanting to listen to what the black community has to say and implement changes to make us feel, more integrated in the society. I'll give an example. A couple weeks ago, we went to RBC for some music event, music exposition or something, and there was the City of London Council. Some people were there, advocating about some green initiative, and I haven't quite seen anyone advocating for a black community, something like that. But that's an example that the city is willing. They care about these initiatives. They want to. Create these changes, I guess.
After that, unless if we want to speak about if it was tried, this initiative was taken before, if these kind of things came out before from the city, what was done, and that's why other people might be, it's the same thing as 2019 as an example.
Yeah, maybe that's why we don't have that perspective
history
yet.
History, what is it at first?
Yeah.
How did it begin?
Okay. One of the reasons why some people tend to question this is a few months back, there was a seat that had to be filled on the police board. There was I think not the campaign manager, but he was part of our present mayor's campaign.
Right. And
he won the seat. Right. There are people that thought that the seat should have gone to a minority. The indigenous community had they put forth some representatives that thought that had the qualifications to make it, so, and they didn't make it. So, they talk about the change that's needed on the police force, right?
Right.
And specifically the board. And actually, there was a former member of the board that was on record as saying that, okay, there's a seat available. Why isn't it being filled by a minority? Because at this point, London's minority population is about, well, percentage of, I should say, London's minority percentage. That's what I'm trying to get at, and I'm fumbling my words. There's about 18%, 20% of London is
yeah, I saw 20% when I
20% of London is minority. So that should be reflected in our police services, our fire services, our teachers,
of course,
all across the board,
Yeah.
right? And people were saying minority percentages, not necessarily the black percentage, but minority percentages, right? So when the seat came up and somebody didn't say, and it was voted by city council, right? They had to stop for a minute because there was actual protest. There was actual people voicing opinion and said, hey, this isn't, right? So they had to listen. Now, I'm saying that because there are often times where things that we want and we need that we don't talk about, we don't verbalize in the right way. Instead, we say, well, it's not going to change, nothing is going to happen. But unless we talk, unless we get counted, and this counting thing is so important, the censuses and all that stuff. When that Muslim family was run down, right? This is what, a year and a half ago, I think. The Muslim family that was run down. They got together. They got together and made their voices heard, so that not only did the city of London pay attention, but it went all the way to on a federal level.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Do you hear about that?
No, it's news for me as
No,
well.
this is about a year and a half ago. There's a gentleman that drove into a family, and the consequences of which, obviously, some of the family members died. There was a memorial outside. There was a memorial that drew a few thousand people.
Wow.
There was actually a march going that was on Oxford Street, and
okay.
that was the Muslim community coming together and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, we're part of this. We're part of the fabric of London, and there's anti-Muslim sentiment that's going on. What do we do about this?"
Yeah, it goes to show that these movements, people going out, stepping outside, voicing their opinion, they can get pushed as far as even federal, for people to hear, to reach, where the ones that are supposed to hear about this, they're actually capable of doing something about it for these type of incidents, accidents, these unfortunate events, shall I call, to happen. So it is an example that we have to take action. We have to step into this.
Yeah, to me, that's actually like a good sign, because it shows that not only are people willing to congregate together and actually drive change, but that there are individual leaders within the community who will come forth and take the necessary steps from whatever organization, contact whatever people, and actually take proactive steps to creating the movement. Because we talk a lot about wanting change, right? But it takes like one person or a few people to actually start taking the actions, which I think is usually the hardest part.
Yeah.
Along the way, as we get into this conversation, do you think it's harder for the black communities to affect change? And why? And the reason I pose that, I'm going to get back to the Muslim community, right? How they came together because this family was killed, right? And they sent messages. They sent messages politically, right?
Yeah.
And they sent messages overall. And so if regardless of what political party you were from, right, you had to take notice of this.
Right. Yeah.
when I believe it was a Friday afternoon. I can't remember, but when there was actual an event taking place on Oxford Street, right by the Muslim Community Center,
Yeah.
right by close to Cherry Hill Mall.
Yeah,
There,
yeah, yeah. I know that. I
right?
know that.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister was there.
Really?
Yes, right. The leaders of most of the political parties were there. Actually, I think they were all there on
All
a
there.
federal level.
Wow.
That's how much attention was given to this incident, right? Now, has the black community ever gotten a response of that nature where the federal government has come together, everybody's come together now and say, hey, we have to address the community in this aspect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But those are things that we're going to talk about on another level as we get back into London specifically. How long have you guys been in London?
Been here 8 months.
Yeah, but same month we arrived here. Yeah.
Give me your 8-month impression of London.
Well, when I came here, I thought it was really diverse. Actually, maybe it has to do with the part of London that I live in. But I see lots of Asians, lots of Indians, Arabs. So my first thought was it's actually pretty diverse, almost as diverse as Waterloo, if not more. So I thought the city was pretty vibrant. I didn't really take too much notice of the underlying societal problems until the later months of when I got here, that I started realizing, oh wow, there's actually quite a decent amount of violent crimes and things of that nature. So overall, my impression is it's diverse, vibrant. I think there's a lot of opportunity for change to still occur, but so far it's not the worst I've seen in Canada.
Okay. Where else have you lived in Canada?
So I've lived in North Bay. I was there for 2 years. I lived in Orangeville for a couple months and Waterloo before I came here.
How long?
And 2 years in Waterloo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lou?
Yeah, since September for me, I did see the diversity here. It is apparent here. Even at the workplace, you see there's different people, Asians, blacks, Middle Eastern. They're there. In my area there in Bayern, it's not as common. I would say as you spread into London, the diversity circle shrinkens. It becomes small. It's centered into an area. So maybe you would feel like it's in that area where you might see different types of culture, just different types of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've lived in Mississauga. It's the same thing here. But here, I did see that just people, they're still in the, let's say, the other parts away from the city, the downtown. People are aware of this diversity. It's not there, but they're nice, they're welcoming. So that's one thing that I saw in London since here. In Mississauga as well, it was just more diverse. I've also been to the east side, East Coast, in New Brunswick. Over there was, I wouldn't say when I was there back then, there wasn't as much diversity as now. I'm pretty sure now it has changed, but yeah.
Okay. So 8 months in London, just about 8 months in London, right? You've kind of been in the area by being in Kitchener, right? And you like you're talking about New Brunswick. And I know you guys are familiar with the Toronto aspect and everything,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Yeah.
Right. What would you like to see in London? Is there anything that you think specifically is missing?
Well, I don't know if this exists already, but if there was like some form of like standardized language training thing because I know a lot of like people from like India, Pakistan who come here struggle a lot with learning, and they're just forced to just do it on the job as they go. And I feel like having that shows a bit more, shows that they're paying more attention and that they show that they care more about making sure these people are well integrated in the society, which is already the biggest thing to start with before you start talking about jobs and all the other things. So I don't know if that exists though.
Okay, but is that should that be is that a government problem?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It
You
should be
wanna-
like some form of standardized thing in the city, like come to the city hall at this time, or I don't know.
For me, I do think comparing it with Toronto, one thing I would like to see more in London is an idea of cultural awareness. That goes into the bracket of just as a city, you want to be welcoming for, of course, more. We talk about 1/5 of London is they're minorities, so this thing of cultural awareness, you see that over there in in the GTA Toronto, but within London, it will encourage more people, because if you think about it, in a society that has an opportunity to see a bit of themselves in this city, with this idea of culture, and we see it like in terms of neighborhoods as well, maybe some events, things like that. We know downtown they have that, but if it could just be a bit more, it's a bit of an example on that side, but that would definitely go a long way.
Yeah.
Culture. How important is culture to?
Culture is very inviting, and it's a pull factor in a ecosystem. I would say in this city, any city, you would want a strong reason to stay there and to be there, to even call up your cousin, join me here. It looks, you know what I mean? So it's a big factor. It's something that it brings people together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to touch on the culture because this year in London, there is 3 or 4 festivals that are of whether it's that will help represent the Black community.
Right.
I know there's Island Fest. That's the biggest one that I think that I can talk about because I see it everywhere. There's Island Fest. There's supposed to be a Jerk Fest.
Oh wow.
Right.
Okay.
There is, I believe there is Emancipation Day that's coming up on August 26th, I think. And so for the first time, you're seeing 3 Black-themed events in the city of London.
Yeah. Or if you count Black History Month, February.
Now, I'm not going to count Black History Month because Black History Month we know is there. It's part of it's part of the fabric not only of London but part of the fabric of Canada. But in London, Ontario, to have 3 Black-themed festivals in the summertime, it's big.
Yeah, it is.
There's even actually and I got to send a big shout out to Soft Life Promo because they also do a festival which I think is the second last week in August, right? And you talk about the importance of culture. Culture makes it inviting for you to participate in London.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So regardless of where you come from, if you see something that represents your culture, then you now want to step out as opposed to just staying within your culture.
Right. Yeah.
Right? The normal thing for somebody to do is when they come to London is to seek out their own. Right?
Yeah.
And we know London before, and I'm going to talk about London from about 20 years ago to London to now.
Yeah.
When you come in, you don't see it right off the hop. You got to go look for it.
True.
Right? And in doing that, it makes it harder for the minority population to get adjusted. And I'm not just talking about, and I'm not talking just about Black communities. I'm talking about minority communities. Right? This is your East Asians, your Africans, your Caribbeans.
Yeah.
Right? You come in, you're looking for something because you need something to ground you, to make you more productive.
For sure.
Right? The city of London, some say is behind the curve in that aspect. It wasn't inviting enough, right? You guys get the 8 month. You guys are here for 8 months, so you need.
Only have the 8 months.
You only have the 8 month
Yeah.
experience. If you're watching this show and you are, what should I say, recent? No, not recent. And you've been in London for a while. Even if you've grown up in London, we want to hear from you. We want to hear about the changes that you've seen happen, right? So if there's somebody out there that's been here for 5 years, we want to hear those changes. You've been here for 10 years. I want to hear those changes. I want you to grade the changes because it's important for us to know where we were and what's coming, and see what's happening now, and
Right.
say, okay, it's the changes are on the right trend, and if not, and then that way, if we can chart these things and say, hey, okay, there's not enough, then we know that there's more work to be done, which is why I'm going to get back to, once again, this, and I got to look it up here. So it is the Anti-Racism Action Plan, right? I started off the show with that because I believe its time is necessary,
Right.
and this is one of the reasons, because if they don't know us and if they don't understand us, and you might think that, okay, black people have been in London since, so they should know us. But that's not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't expect somebody to know you if you don't introduce yourself and let
course.
them know you're here. Let them know this is what you need, right? And which calls into one of the points that I want to make is in being counted. It involves voting and being recognized. And we've had shows that have themed on voting and why people should vote, right? And it's for the same reason why this action plan is either going to fail or it's going to be successful. And I think it would be successful, but the only way it can be successful is the same way you guys said, that you have to contribute to it. You have to look for it. You've got to go in and say, hey, yes, I want to be a part of this. I want to make my voice heard. So once again, people, we're going to talk about the Anti-Black Racism Action Plan. There is, it's on Facebook. I see this, this one was sent by David Ferreira from your Ward 13 councillor. He's got it on his Facebook page. He's been sharing it. London Black Network has been sharing it. I gotta say, Evolution, us here at EVOMM3 and our sister Evo TV, we've been sharing it. Please, if you see it out there, not only pay attention to it, look on it, read it over, and then actually do something about it. And when we say do something about it, make your voice be heard. Read it.
Understand it.
Understand it. Don't just glance over. Don't go say, well, you know what, here it is. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, maybe this, maybe not. There's a bunch of good people that's been pushing it, and they've been pushing it for a reason. And they want to see us get ahead. They want to see us achieve, right? London, as we all know, well, when I say we all, I'm talking about us here, is a music city.
Yep.
Right? City of music. UNESCO a little bit over a year ago designated London the only music city in Canada, right? That should offer change for our artists, right? And that's you guys. You guys are aspiring artists, right?
Yeah.
Now, you know what the scene is like. You know what the scene is like in Mississauga, which is closer to Toronto, so you got that Toronto.
Yeah.
Oh,
He knows Mississauga.
Mississauga,
yeah. I'm getting it confused, so let me switch over and switch here. You know the Mississauga scene, right? What do you think? What do you think needs to happen? And big shout out, hold on, let me send a big shout out to James, right? Because James jamming, James.
Sure.
James O'Rourke has been pushing and pushing and pushing on this music scene to get things done.
Yeah.
So once again, big
of course. Shout out to James O'Rourke.
Yeah, and I also got to shout out ISO Group, Zara Habib, and because she's been doing things herself to push the music boundaries, right? So those are two people right off the top of my head that have been pushing to do things and to get us recognized. And so once again, I'm going to let you handle and talk about the Mississauga and what's needed for London to catch up, because...
Yes, going back to your question, I think we can go back to the point I said. If we can optimize this sense of culture, if we have all types of people in terms of artists that come from different areas. We have Latinos, we have even Europeans, Indians, if we can have, if they can have this. So
yeah.
So what I was going to say, we'll resume.
Let me hold for a minute and apologize for the train of thought. You know, there is a sense of spirituality every time we come on this show, and especially when I pull up my iPad, and my iPad is set to go off and give me.
Just letting you know it's present.
Bible passages.
Yeah, you know, I got these little Bible passages that come up every so often. I always keep forgetting to, when I'm on the show, to put a mute on it. But maybe, you know what? Hey, if I'm not even gonna say anything, maybe that's what it's supposed to do. But yes, so you know, that's the interrupting train of thought, just putting us back on a spiritual perspective.
Sure. All right, I'll continue. I'll begin. So I really do think that if we could have these cultural events, cultural awareness thing, they can serve as more as resources for artists to show their craft, what they're doing, to participate, because it also engages with the society, with someone else that has grown in, that is born in London, but that's what has been happening in Mississauga, because they're a step ahead on that point in terms of offering different ways for artists to show themselves, what they've mastered, what they practice, what they do every day, their craft, as I was saying. It's another canvas if we can do that, use these tools, just promote the cultures. There's different people here, but they don't know that they have a place here. And that is usually a canvas for an artist, someone that has something to show, whether it's a voice, an action, drawing, all types of artists I'm talking about. Yeah. And that's why I touched on the cultural neighborhoods, like those streets during the summer it's the city of music here. So imagine what, in terms of music, would be there. You would have everybody performing. The other day we had DJs. There was a DJ that was downtown. It's very welcoming, and it brings out everybody to get to hear, to know about who else is in the city.
Now, when we talk about diversity in the music, right, and that's really where we're going, is it a London problem per se, or is it a Canadian problem? And then even better, is it defined by age? Because I'm going to break it down why I'm going in these three routes. As I look at the younger generation out there, right? Yeah. They're open to music. They're listening to anything and they're listening to everything, right? Yeah. But are they the decision makers that offer the contracts that help you? Even though we're in an age where if you are an artist and you have that drive, you might not necessarily need that record contract as it was as necessary many years ago, because you've got your YouTube where you can go on, you've got all these different avenues, you've got iTunes, you've got Apple Music, you can get your music on all these platforms, right? Which allow you to get ahead, because if you get a hit on through streaming, it kind of bypasses the record industry per se. Yeah, that's true. But however, Canada is still, to a certain degree, it's got the record labels that have a certain amount of control over stuff, and they're looking at what they think is popular. Right. Right. So is it a London problem, or is it a Canadian problem in terms of and the hierarchy and the structure of the music being that we've got these executives that said, well, you know what, rock sells or pop sells, and not necessarily hip hop sells, not reggae, not this, not that. But when you come into the city and you come on a certain level and you go around, you hear people listening to a little bit of everything. Yeah.
So I think it's a Canadian problem, but where it becomes a London problem is where you start talking about the variety of, different musical events and shows that they put on. Okay. So it's a Canadian problem, yes. Like, at the end of the day, if that's what they think, that rock is one going to sell.
No, I'm not saying specifically. I just chose that.
I know. I'm just using that to further explain my point. So, where it becomes a London problem is the variety of shows and events and all that kind of stuff.
London, the Forest City Music Awards is coming up.
Yeah.
There's always been talk that it hasn't been representative, it hasn't had the right representation. I'm gonna say big shouts to Jammin again because
Yes,
he's
you
been
got the hip-hop.
Yeah, he's been pushing for that, and apparently they said this year it's been one of the most inclusive years ever,
Yeah.
right? How important is that for the music itself to be able to get the support that it needs?
It's very important because music is can be for artists here in London. The music industry here, it's fueled by many different things with that as well. If you put into this idea that we're talking about culture and different types of genres as well of music, but hip hop or any other, it grows by having people understand what it is and hearing it in different many ways out there. Canadians, we're talking about Canadians. Is it that like it's rock that they prefer? It's not really. It doesn't go like that really. It's if every single genre is being put out there the same way, then you will see how it differs. If yes, if not, or
Equal representation.
exactly.
Equal
In
representation.
a political term, if we want to go there, yeah.
Equal
Yeah,
representation.
I think it's a great thing because it's a motivating factor, you know? If you have artists who are putting in work and they're not even being, there's no
Recognized.
category to recognize them. So I feel like all the artists who got on, you know, shout out to all of them, you know, Cole, Solo,
Yes.
Paris Monroe.
you know, even Jammin got nominated, you know. go vote for all of them, you know. I want all of them to win. It's the first one, and, you know, whoever wins, it's going to be history. And whoever's nominated, it's already history. So I think it's a big motivating factor. Now there's at least, if there was nothing else you were aspiring, now there's something to aspire as an artist, you know. And there's going to be more with more push and, you know, more artists just doing great things. So shout out to all of them, you know. It was a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're about the halfway mark, and because we're at the halfway mark, I'm going to ask that question. On the flyer, it says pros and cons of living in London. Where are we at with the pros and cons?
I think a pro is that the nightlife is pretty good. You know, you got, you know, everything on Richmond Street. Every weekend there's a different spot you can hit up. That's one of my pros. You can see another one.
Another pros,
It's good
music.
about it.
It's good music, good artists.
Honestly,
We
yeah,
have to
compared
say,
to like
you know.
Waterloo, there's way more music events here. So
Yeah, you
that-
know,
that's
you
a
have
huge
different
thing for
ways
sure.
of seeing it. There's a theater. There's outside there. You can walk into a booth, or even DJs. You know, you can see them. It's very
Just last weekend they had that. I don't know if it was for Cinco de Mayo or something, but
Yeah.
you know, we saw someone playing
Yeah.
the saxophone with his son. So that was pretty cool, you know.
Where
Very interesting.
you're talking about the Latino festival? Was it the Latino festival?
Cinco
I
de
think-
It was
Mayo.
on Saturday.
Oh,
Saturday.
okay, Saturday. Yeah,
So it was the
Yeah.
6th, but you know.
yeah, Cinco, yeah.
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 Okay.
One of the cons.
Man, you
I
went to
would
the
say-
cons already. You didn't even let me line up to say I was going to ask the question about the cons. You went there,
Alright.
but that's good though. Give me the cons.
Cons. All right. Okay, I won't say it's a cons or
con.
Well, it's a con.
It's a con, bro.
How are you going to say we're talking about the cons, but it's not really a con?
Yeah,
So if it's not really a con, then it can't be. We're talking about the cons. I want to hear the cons of living in London.
the cons of living in London. I have to say it. Transportation. That's one of the things I would say.
Yeah, I don't really consider that one a big
But-
an issue, but I guess for you, yeah.
Well, you know, like if we talk about the city in general, what does it have to? Because okay, if we were talking about minorities, right? If we go back to our original point there, you come into a new city, a new environment. Most of the time, that 1/5 of the population won't have that money to buy a car or something.
Yes.
So what's the next best thing is transportation. How do I get around, and how is it there? We know it's a problem in the city here in London. Hopefully it will get better. But that's one of the things, along with the cost of housing or just rent in general. I think that's overall with Canada, but
You stole my con. I was gonna say
The
living
housing,
expenses.
Living expensive.
the living
I
expenses.
came to London thinking it was gonna be cheaper than Waterloo. It's the same thing. So
Yeah.
it's like, damn, I just got.
It's one of the
I got
things
played.
because it's a competitive as a city. You want to be competitive to another city
cities,
like
yeah, yeah.
Mississauga, Waterloo. You want to have a reason why that person would come, and that could be that. Those are big reasons. They look like they're affecting everywhere,
Yeah.
but that transportation, honestly, it's different here. In terms of me having experience from another city,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I would say that.
I can agree with that.
You know,
What are your cons?
My cons of what are my cons of living in London? You know what? I didn't think about it as much. I was thinking of all the good things, but my cons would be representation, I think.
Okay.
And I'll break down representation in a few ways. Once again, the representation affects us in the way of we don't get the things, or we don't, not that we don't get the things, it's we don't make the impressions that we need to make.
I see.
When you come to Canada, and I've been here for so long, when I first came to Toronto, the impressions of being fresh from Jamaica, fresh, right? It was tough to a certain degree. There are a lot of Jamaicans that have been here that have done a lot of things, but when I came in, there was a time in the 90s, late 90s and stuff in Toronto where there was a lot of violence,
Yeah.
and specifically in the Jamaican community, especially in our dance community and all that stuff, there was a lot of it that was coming there, so it tended to overshadow some of the good things that are
Yeah.
right, and it left that stigma, right. And the funniest thing is whether or not we actually recognize it, and I think a lot of people do, especially when you come from Jamaica. There's that stigma that Jamaican culture is so prevalent, right? No matter where you go, whether you're in the States or Canada,
Yeah.
that it's looked on. And when you
Yeah.
have that stigma that came with the violence, it's like, to certain people, the minute you say, "Oh, Jamaicans," you say,
Yeah, they already have an idea.
They
think they have an idea,
think.
yeah.
And it carried on to other black communities as well, and it really did carry on, right?
Yeah, I see that.
I remember having to work to do stuff in Ottawa, and in Ottawa it had a lot of Haitians, right?
Yeah.
And the crime that was there, the crime that was there started to taint that Haitian community and the French black-speaking community, which is not only Haitian, right? Because you've got
Yeah,
African,
francophone, yeah.
you have a few actual francophones that are there, but you also have a lot of African countries that speak French, you know.
West Africa.
Yeah, so not only you got the Burundi and
Oh, East African.
Cameroon, Niger,
right,
yeah, all of them, yeah.
right. There was some negative connotations coming out of the Haitian community as well, right? So there were so many times that were back then where you look and you see the negative stereotypes of being black being showcased.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm gonna give you some stories. Being in Toronto, you know, Carabana would come around, and I remember this is how you do. Carabana was coming, and Carabana was big. There was a time where Carabana was like the second biggest festival in one-day event in North America, not just Canada, North America. That's how many people were coming into the city.
Yeah.
That's how much money this thing was generating. So you'd open up the Toronto Sun or Star, and you'd read violence. If there was something happened, they showcased it. July comes around. All of a sudden, you see these things happening. but it didn't make the papers. It wasn't
Right.
making the papers, right? Because they had to put a clamp on it for a little bit because there's one time there's 1 million people coming into the city to watch Caravana,
Yeah.
right? So there was a clamp on it, right? The events were still happening, right? But the clamp was on it. They didn't say anything. Caravana's over. Give it up another 2 weeks. We're back in the headlines.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons. That's one of the things that showed economic clout.
Yeah.
Right? Here's something that happens. There's other communities that have violent acts happen. I'm not going to call out which communities, but there are things that happen, but they have the economic clout to be able to deflect some of that.
By economic clout, you mean like people in...
Well, if you have the second biggest festival in North America coming in, the amount of money that comes in, if you looked at Caravana, you would see if a hotel was $100 when Caravana came around, it was $300-400.
Yeah.
And I'm talking, I remember there was motels up on Kingston Road that it was $80 a night or $70 a night, and you come around Caravana time and you're paying $200 and something for that same room,
Yeah.
right? So the city was feeling the financial effects of
Well,
Caravana.
the way I see it, sorry to cut you between, is that a governing body wouldn't align a negative narrative to something that is bringing in.
That's
something.
But yeah,
where,
that's
and
the
that's
point
where
you
I'm
make,
going
yeah.
with. That's where I'm going with
Basically,
it, right?
yeah.
The financial gain that the city was making allowed it to say, okay, well, you know what? We don't have to talk about these guys as much, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I've always said that we as a community don't have economic clout. And I'm not saying that it gives us something to hide under, but it also spurs people to look at us differently and treat us differently. When you have economic clout, you get to achieve the things that is needed.
Yeah.
And people move faster for you,
Yeah.
right? Got the economic clout and you talk to City Hall and you say, well, we need this in our community. They say, hey, these guys are right. And I'm going to draw back to the what I talked about, the Muslim community coming together and force. Literally, they came together, and I'm not going to say they forced anything, but they came and said this has to be done. You've got to make it safe for the Muslim community. You've got to do this, and city halls. The city halls and whether it's London and the City Hall of Ontario and Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
They paid attention, and not only they paid attention, all the other parties, the oppositions and
interest.
everybody else
Yeah.
paid attention because they had not only the political will, but also through the economics to be able to deliver, the financial capacity.
It's within their interest.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the way I see it, yeah, that's unfortunately how it has to be because, I mean, it's not unfortunate, that's just how it works. Like,
Yeah,
it's just business.
This
you need
is
to
business.
have
Yes, we
a certain,
become.
yeah, exactly. You need to have a certain standing,
Right.
Yeah.
a certain, call it equity of the global market of London to be able to demand certain things. And
Right.
to your point, I'm sure the Muslim community have that economic standing
Right.
because
Yeah.
for whatever
Toronto has
reason.
it to a certain extent because
Yeah.
of the volume and people but when you come to London and you don't have that, right?
yeah.
It puts you at a disadvantage, right?
So,
And that's for any minority community. So the things that I'm talking about, the black community, will also affect those that don't have it,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
That's true.
So those were the cons. The cons.
I think that was a really, really good point. You expanded in quite
Yeah.
great depth
It
about
is.
that. It
Yeah,
kind
you
of
do see that.
encompassed the major problem, in my opinion, because how you're perceived
Perception.
is how you will be treated, So if there's this stigma, then we should actually be working on removing that stigma, creating a new narrative or perception, and that starts with or that all falls under economic empowerment, as you said, economic clout. So we just have to agree to build institutions within the community, organizations, businesses, and just keep elevating the entire...
It's interesting. If you go way back, we were kind of talking on it the last podcast a young, let's say African American or like Indian, when they grow, when they come to Canada, make sure to build. We're saying to build that stigma, this strong image of ourselves to be perceived differently or better, right?
Yeah.
So they tell you, have good grades, grow up, become a doctor, be this, and that's why you will be perceived. You'll get that status, and then with that, the community moves up as well. You know, that's what was.
But there's
then
also a
there-
problem with that because
It's very individualistic.
it's very individual.
That's
Yeah, there
what I
has
was
to be
getting
a
to, yeah.
togetherness and like some institutions and
Yes,
organizations.
that's
that
what I was
actually,
getting
yeah.
to. Because after that, you see people, they hire, they move up, but then what you thought you were gonna maybe change or be the voice of, it's still really much happening. It's still like, so that means the community is still seen, perceived, without, with that image of it's just them. They're not bringing in too much. Just a
Yeah.
negative image in general. You know what I mean?
I mean, a great example, just to add to your point, is I'll talk about Nigerians specifically in the United States. You know, if you look at I think it's similar to Indians as well, but Nigerians and Indians in the United States are the most, like every new year of cohort of doctors graduating, getting their PhDs, majority of them are Nigerians and Indians. And that's a huge statistic that's going to help us in like 10, 15 years from now because those people hopefully are going to do these things we're saying and actually
Yeah.
form platforms, let's say, to push these narratives that we want so that they can keep.
And that's one of the, and that's gonna lead into some of the changes that I've seen. So coming here, you know, late night, like or just before 2000s, or before 2000, right? I think it's
Yeah.
like here, like 99, 98, to now. Early days, more of a crab in the bucket mentality,
Yeah.
right? The support system wasn't there, right? And if there are some that when they came and they achieved certain things and they look down and you see the crabs in the bucket and they want to pull you down, it didn't make you want to help anybody.
Yeah.
Right? So the next thing would be there are those that were so ashamed of being that once they got to that, it's not even that they looked and saw the crab, they were just like, you know what, you kind of had to detach, assimilate the moral, not even assimilation is just the wrong word. You just kind of had to, you played the game. And then you started playing the game and you know you had to be, once you start playing the game, you got so involved in the game that you're like, man, it's good on this side. I'm not even bothering on the next side. And like I said, they didn't even look down to say, the other was, there's, like I said, the crab in the buckets that you're going to get pulled down if you put your hand out to help. They didn't even want to because they had to do certain things to achieve. They had to, you know, and once they got there, they're like, man, right? There's a generation that's coming up now, and one is because there's roads that were paved. Right?
Sure.
There are things that people had to do so another generation can come on and carry the torch. But you see the younger generation coming up now, and they're paying, some are paying a lot more attention to things, the way things are, than maybe some of us didn't when we first got, and you know.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
It's when I wouldn't have thought to do it. Well, obviously it's a different time, but the conversations I'm trying to have now, I didn't have them when I first came here because, you know, it wasn't the mentality was let's get ahead, let's do this, let's focus on this, not realizing that, you know what, you've got to reach out to everybody to be able to pull a community to get the community going. Yeah, it's a collective, right? If you're worried about the stigmas that are attached to you, right? You don't necessarily want to reach out and change those things. You're so worried about it that you're shying away. You're shying away because the stigma is there. Okay, and I'm going to use this. I'm just going to use this. This is not an actual thing, but I'm just using it, right? Okay, so, you know, Jamaicans, they're this, they're that. You're worried about it, so you want to keep your head down. there's a change now where it's like, no, let's change that narrative,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, of course.
So that's some of the changes that I've seen for coming from 1999 to
Yeah.
being
I think
2023.
that's a good point. I think some of it is still happening. Like I'll use the example. I just started my program at Finesser, and I'm seeing a lot of Nigerians who just came. I'm talking like a week in Canada, and I noticed their mentality is very different. Not necessarily in a bad way. It's more so like they're just coming here to just get all the money for themselves, and not particularly like assimilate outside of the Nigerian community and just like stay with themselves, get
Right.
money. They don't want to do these things we're talking about, form a togetherness, build, economic stuff, just get businesses together.
Yeah.
It's more so like individualistic. But I think after a certain time, once they stay here and those former worries are no longer in the mind, like, oh, is my job going to be here because all the banks are closing recklessly and, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Once they realize that it's somewhat more stable, then they begin to think about these things. So to your point, it could be just like they just had, it was like, oh, man, you're worried about that. We got other stuff to worry about. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is more important
This
than
is-
worrying about all that, So it's kind of like that, and that's changing over time, to your point. I think it's...
Yeah, that realization does come after a few times. Once someone has settled and understood, okay, where am I? What is it?
But life is
But
a
then-
bit better, and then
Yes.
you're like, okay,
Yeah.
now we can start thinking
But-
about how we can,
Like-
get economic clout and all this
Yeah.
stuff,
But it's really a collective push
of course.
that does the long-term change.
And I'm glad you guys brought up the point about the individual and the collective push, right? When we come to Canada, we're on that individualistic aspect, right? And it takes us a while to understand that it's a community. They say it takes a community to raise a child,
course,
right?
yeah.
But we come here on that individualistic thing, and we keep it, and we're like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna do me, right? I'm gonna be better than the guy next door, and if the guy next door starts to creep up, I'm gonna do better than him,
Yeah.
right? But it's not, okay, let's look at this community. Let's look at where I am and where I fit in, and how can I make it better? Because we're so caught up in the individualistic
Yeah.
aspect of things, right?
It's true.
So that's part of the changes that I've seen grow a little bit, right? That I've seen over since I've been here, like I said, in the 20.
I think it's also as you can also see as that person, they arrive in London, their neighbor. It's gonna sound really
This is called real talk.
You know,
So real talk. Yeah, this is real talk.
Hey, might as well real talk. Their neighbor is white. I'll focus on myself. I'm different. I'm myself, different up and down, everything. I'm not gonna step out and understand what they are, but then they're gonna feel my question. Is there anybody else like me that maybe I am thinking what we're talking about, but I won't bring it because it's not that much of a deal. But that idea of collective, it comes from that person that is wondering. Maybe there's someone else that is thinking or that wants to join, see how it is, make life here better, which will eventually improve the society, the culture in a city like London. So that's why they start off being just stay individual and focusing on what's at hand right there, right now. And then after it develops.
Yeah, that's good. I just want to make a distinction though. We're not talking about like individualistic in terms of like they're not around other people.
No, it's a feeling.
It's more so like an internal pursuit of like I'm making a conscious effort to be a part of this collective and contribute, as opposed to just I'm around my people, but I'm just working, trying to get higher pay and live a better life for my family. That's the distinction between just being around them and being a collective.
Yeah, because when you are around them, that's when you start thinking about different things as a collective, what's going around. Yeah.
I got a question for you, and it's kind of like one of those real talk questions, right?
Okay.
When you come to London, or when you come let's say anywhere in Canada, and you're looked at and you're looked at as a black person, sometimes there's that generalization.
Yeah.
And part of that generalization could be because there is really and truly no dominant black country. I want you to follow me on this for a minute, right?
Yeah.
You've got Russia, China, United States, England, France, right? Germany. They're looked on as, as dominant countries,
The superpowers, yeah.
right? So when you're in a white environment, they can want to find out about their white friends, and you're from Germany, you're from France, and they're excited and it's like this. Oh yeah, okay, you're from, like I said, Germany or France or Portugal or wherever. When you start talking about a black country, you talk about it in an aspect of, oh, that's a good place to visit,
Right.
right? That's a good, oh yeah, I go there for vacations. Nice place to visit,
Yeah.
right? But we're considered third world countries,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we get that third world mentality. And we come to Canada, right? And we get looked on as third world countries.
Yeah.
You get that
You
third
get
world.
that treatment.
You get that third world
treatment.
treatment.
Yeah.
There was a time it went on to India and Pakistan and of that that Southeast Asian aspect
Yeah.
of it, right? But when they come, they change the perspective because they go hustle and they go buy this store, they go buy
Businesses, yeah.
right? And then you have the Chinese of that nature, right?
Yeah.
But Chinese is the funniest thing is they're looked at as victims of a repressive government, right?
Yeah.
So, but as a people, they're looked at as they're achievers, they're this and they're that.
Yeah.
But as a black person, whether you're coming from here, we just looked at that third world. Great place to visit.
Yeah.
Great place to visit,
That's the tag.
right? Great place to visit.
Nice
But
safari.
we haven't achieved as a country, but we have achieved great things on an individual basis, right?
Yeah, that's true.
We're great. They look at Jamaica and say, oh, these guys can run,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? But running it's not talking about economic development. It's not. Great runners, oh, great. And food, blah, 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 great place to visit, right? See what I mean? They
Yeah.
individualize our achievements.
It's like, oh, this person was the first black graduate of this.
Right. We can have
Yeah.
black people that are, right? We've achieved, but it hasn't gone beyond where it says, look at that black country that's achieved, because it hasn't. So therefore, that's part of where the perceptions come when you come and people look, because part of it is history.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
when you come here, you don't come with them knowing your history to say, oh, wow, these are great people, or they've done great things, or blah, blah, blah. Yes, they've got great individual history. Like I said, everybody knows Usain Bolt because Usain Bolt did this. People know Muhammad Ali did this. Michael Jordan did this instead, you know what I mean? LeBron is doing this. Mbappe is doing this in soccer. You know what I'm saying? So we've got great individual names. Great individual names. But the economic names as well too.
Yeah.
Here there are a few billionaires out of Africa, right?
Yeah.
And you hear that Michael Jordan's a billionaire, and maybe Oprah and
LeBron,
right?
Jay-Z.
But on the upper level of
was
the
gonna
billionaire
say,
status.
The Dangote family.
Right, but on the upper level of the billionaire status, you never hear about somebody cracking that, right?
Yeah.
So, perception. Once again, we talk about a perception about how people are being perceived, and I want you to take it beyond, because people ask, why are we being perceived this way? Why is it, right? And you got to go look at that. So you're here in London, and the perception of us is...
It's as if the flag has a history. If I know that, that's what I will perceive, right?
Right.
you know, the sense. So
Yeah, and what I think about that is like there's no way to change that unless you have African superpowers.
And I forget you get any kind of superpowers.
Yeah,
But yes,
but
African,
they
but
have
yes.
to be African though, because there's a
Oh man,
famous.
that's a whole other debate. that
No,
we-
because why I say they have to be African is because that is the home of black people. Unless Africa as a continent is looked at as not a, I'm just trying to say a bad word there, but like not a basically
toxic.
crappy place to live and survive at. If it's not looked at as it like that, no, this is real.
yeah,
It needs to overcome that, and it starts from there. If the continent of Africa was developing fast
and each of them together.
and each of them
pulling,
together,
pushing.
then it'd be like, oh, they used to be, but now they are this, this, and this, and
Yeah.
that would change absolutely everything. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love it. I asked a real talk question, and I'm gonna hold it right there because that's a whole nother conversation in itself. Gotta give a big thanks and shout out to, once again, I'll start with the Wien Community Center. Gotta pass the T doing her thing, right? People check it out online. There is a library at the Wien Community Center, a black library, a lot of books, a lot of authors. Check it out, the Wien Community Center's online. Big shouts to Angel over the Fix Hair Salon. Ladies, if you're looking for that fix, if you need a fix, right? I'm gonna do that little old school there. If you need a fix, right? Check it out, the Fix Hair Salon. Gotta talk, if you're looking for some good food, Paranoid Bar and Grill. Big shouts to Jiggy and the crew, and for my dudes, haircuts and all of that. Up like 7 barbershop puts and everybody over there. Gonna talk about Pride. Big shouts to Pride and Steven doing the work, making their community safe, especially in these times. Gonna talk about Rhythm Movements Community Association Flow Fest, the Rhythm Flow Fest this summer, August 5th and 6th in Ottawa, one of the biggest reggae music festivals anywhere. And when I say anywhere, that includes Toronto. Flow Fest, right? Rhythm Movements Communities Association, August 5th and 6th. Then we go to Soul Kitchen Radio out of Hamilton. Big shouts to Big John and the crew. Canada's #1 reggae music station. Then we come back into London. Like I said, one of our newest sponsors. She's got so many products, so many beautiful products for ladies. I got to talk about Black Lotus. You're gonna see us. You're gonna on the Evo TV website. It's gonna be. You're gonna see all these things. We're gonna be showcasing black enterprises, black entrepreneurs, along with events that's coming up. There will be an events page as we get closer to launching all these things. We'll let you know. But once again, thank you for being a part of Real Talk. There's some serious questions that got talked about here. Please, if you've looked at this show and whenever you look at it, write something down. Send a quick IG message over. We're on Instagram. That's Real Talk on Instagram. If you want to hit us up on Facebook, it's True Evolution, Evo space Lucian. Join us. Join our page. Get on. Put comments in there, things that you'd like us to talk about, questions you want answered, questions you want my dudes to answer. Right? These are my dude co-hosts. Easy on the left, Luke on the right.
That's easier for you.
No, you got it right.
I got it right once. Let me leave
it.
the show with my pride intact, right? Let me leave it right there. Easy and Luke. They're gonna be back in another few weeks. Next week's show, we're bringing back type diabetes. We're going on the health kick once again. We're gonna finish off the conversation that we started with Mystery Furtado. Big shouts to type diabetes. I forgot to mention her earlier. Once again, that's type diabetes. If you are in, I'm not even going to say the black community. Yes, the black community, and you are suffering from diabetes. This is where you need to go to get information. And when we talk about information, we talk about things as if you're from Africa or from the Caribbean and you're used to eating a certain type of food and you have diabetes. You know, when you go to your doctor, they say, well, you got to do this, you got to have this in this servings, you got to do this. Well, what she does is she puts it in foods that you normally eat. So look her up online, type diabetes. If you're in the community and you're suffering from diabetes and you want to know what to eat and how to eat and you want it from a black perspective. And on that note, once again, thanks for being a part of the Real Talk experience, and we will see you next week.
See ya.
Fade to black, and we out.